you that the views expressed in today's show do not reflect the views of KZLX, KNWT, or Northwest Missouri State University. Thanks for tuning in and enjoy the show.
And welcome to the Weekend Sports Kickoff on, finally it's March. February's over with, so that means March means springtime, hopefully sometime soon. But I'm Kramer Sanson along with Jacob Blair, Andrew Botwinick, and Andrew Wegley. It's a good thing. Kind of started a little bit late on this today because we could have had Andrew Botwinick almost knocked out. Good thing Andrew Wegley, the People's Champion, was here to save Andrew on this one. So the Andrew saving Andrew, that's always fun.
It's how it's meant to be, man.
I was going to say, I almost owe him my life. They made a set malfunction, and the whole thing just came toppling down on me.
Let's just hope that doesn't happen again. Let's move from the set falling on us and going to Northwest Athletics, as there was a couple of games this week on Tuesday and on Thursday. Going off the start of the first game was the women's taking on Missouri Western. It was a rivalry match through both games. The women Bearcats lost to Missouri Western 66-56 as Northwest was leading at halftime by 2 points and going into the second half, it just wasn't there for them. But we'll get to a little bit later on with the Washburn thing. But that second half wasn't a very good performance by the Bearcats.
Yeah, not at all, and it's not what you want to see. And after the game, Austin Meyer talked about it's getting down to the last couple of games for them. But then and you said we'll talk about it later. They go into the Washburn and they end the season with a win over the second-ranked team in the conference. I don't think anybody really saw that coming from the women Bearcats. But they had 3 seniors on the roster playing their last game. That's all they're really playing for. They're kind of eliminated from postseason. They're just playing for themselves and playing for each other. And I don't think I've ever seen Austin Meyer as happy as he was after that game in Topeka.
And with that Washburn game, yes, we kind of just – I think everyone with this women's program just wants to gloss over that Missouri Western game because it wasn't a good performance. Senior night at home, last home game, a lot of losses in a row. You struggle with that. Then you show up to Washburn, and they were loose. They were ready to go. There wasn't a whole lot to play for, so they could just go out and play basketball. But Washburn, the big thing with that game is they were the second-best team in the conference. After that loss, because it is so top-heavy right now in the MIAA, they dropped all the way to the 6th seed after that loss. So Northwest Missouri State, to their credit in this women's team, causing Washburn some troubles beyond just the loss last night.
Yeah, they're kind of playing spoiler as they get positioned to go to the MIAA tournament because Washburn, that's a significantly harder path through the tournament once you're going, from the 2 seed to the 6 seed, whereas they would have been playing worse teams. Now they have to play better teams. They have to play up throughout the tournament, which means almost nothing for Northwest. But I'm sure it felt good to go out there and get that win. And like Austin talked about after the game, Coach Meyer just was ecstatic after that game, and he said something like, "Yeah, I'm actually happy after this one." So unlike that Western game where they just kind of they hung with them, but they could just never quite get over that hump.
Exactly.
I think a lot of that Western game too was losing Haggard in the second half, and the way she went down, and she had 18 points. She was, I believe, at the time leading the team in scoring, and to be able to lose that kind of player in the second half of that game, it just kind of crumbled for Northwest. And then coming into the next game against Washburn, it kind of was at the back of their mind. They kind of pushed it out of their mind because it's the last game of the season. They kind of already knew where it was going to go and that they needed to kind of build from that. And to be able to come in here and Mallory McConkey, 23 points, Kendi Eaton, 20 points as well. They just put on a show, and they were able to do it offensively even without Jalen Haggard, one of their better scorers. Yeah,
let's also go on and talk about the Washburn game that happened on Thursday. Northwest defeated Washburn 72-70. And the way that helped them out the most was that first quarter where Northwest scored 16 when Washburn only had 4. That defense stepped up. Washburn couldn't really make shots, and that's what if it wasn't for that first quarter, the Northwest probably wouldn't have got the win on this one and to end out the regular season.
It wasn't just the first quarter. This team opened up a 17-point lead with about 2.5 minutes to go before halftime, and if they were able to maintain that into halftime, they probably would have felt a lot better. Washburn was able to cut it to 6, and at that point, 11-point lead at halftime. I think everyone there knew that Washburn, as good as they were going to make a run. And the impressive thing from Northwest is Washburn made that run. They were able to come back and tie it. Washburn was even able to get several different leads throughout the course of that. And once they got the lead, you kind of felt as, okay, it's over for Northwest. It was, they put in a great effort, but Washburn was too much. But Northwest, they kept with it. They didn't let dropping that lead phase them. They kept knocking down shots, and ultimately they were able to hit free throws at the end of the game. And it was, we've talked about over and over again, they can't put together a complete game. This was a complete game from this team, even though they gave up that 17-point lead. When you're playing a team as good as Washburn and Northwest, who's been struggling, they're going to come back. But to end up all game long, hitting shots all game long consistently, it was a great performance from them.
I think that was the whole thing about this Washburn game, is that for the first time, or one of the first times all season, which we've seen it time and time again, Northwest will be in the game, but then one bad stretch of play or one bad quarter will just take them out of it, and from that point on, they just can't get back in it. They can't stay in it. They can't get stops. And once they're down 10, it's like the game's over. Where in this one, Washburn made that run, and instead of kind of cowering in that moment and sinking in that moment, Northwest did the opposite. They fought back, and they stuck with them, and they pulled out that 2-point win. And by the way, that was the first time they beat the Ichabods, whatever it is, in Washburn since 1985. Ichabods, yeah. Well, it's a dumb mascot, so.
In the third quarter for this game, that's when Washburn was trying to get some points back. And this Northwest team, throughout the season, they haven't been good in the second half at all. During third quarter, they've been outscored 68 points. In the fourth quarter, they were only outscored by 50 points throughout the entire season going into that, and they were able to keep that win and go neck to neck with them in that fourth quarter.
Real quick, going back to the run from Washburn, I think the key to this game was Northwest. They didn't get all 17 back in one 4-minute stretch. It took them a whole 10, 12 minutes to get those 17 points back. So as it was happening, it was Northwest was up 17, and then Northwest was up 14, and then maybe go back 15 on a free throw, then drop to 11, and all game long, as Washburn was coming back, it wasn't, okay, you're up 17 or you're up 11, and all of a sudden we're up 2. It was fluctuating back. It was a slow comeback for Washburn, and I think that helped keep the confidence up for Northwest, because during that they were still hitting shots. As Washburn was starting to hit more of theirs, Northwest was still able to be consistent on offense. So when Washburn did end up getting that lead, it helped Northwest be like, we're fine. We just got to keep hitting shots, keep playing defense, and we'll end up with a win.
And this was like one of the games that have happened recently to where Northwest was able to hit that shot and be able to make it. They were 50% from the field the entire night, to 44 from 3-point. And this is a Northwest team that got to the free throw line a lot this season, and they were 11 for 12 last night, which it seems like this is one of their strong points in this team, is the free throw shooting, especially from Kylie Coleman and Kendi Eaton. These two throughout the season helped them. Mallory McConkey had over 100 attempts on the free throw line this entire season, and the fact that she scored 23 points, also tallied 5 rebounds is what helped, and with Kendi Eaton with 20 points as well. You saw them step up more with Jalen Haggard out due to injury.
Yeah, I think a part of this too, I mean, and if we're being candid, if we're being honest, some of these girls are playing for roster spots next year. I mean, Austin Myers bringing in, I think, at least 10 now signees and recruits. Like, you only got so many spots on a roster. You've only graduating 3 seniors. There's only so many spots. And if it's I mean, the last few weeks of this season, it has to be, prove it now, or you've got no guarantees going next season. Obviously, there's some guarantees in this roster. I think Kendi Eaton is far and away one of their better players. Mallory McConkey in a similar situation, one of the best rebounders in the team. Jalen Haggard, probably one of the best shooters on the team. But the rest of these girls, and no disrespect to them, just a lot of them are kind of competing for a chance to play next season, at least continue to play regular minutes at the very least. So while they had nothing as a team to play for, which kind of sounds bad, they had a lot to play for themselves. But I think more so than that, they were playing for Coach Meyer, and they were playing for each other.
I like how Mallory McConkey is one of the players on the team that is very good at rebounding. She's only 5'9", and she's led the team in rebounds, which is exceptional. Also, throughout this game against Washburn, the minutes eaters, as McConkey had 37 minutes, Kendi Eaton with 36, Kylie Coleman 38, Erica Slosher 39, and Mia Stillman with 30. This is one of the many games that Mia Stillman has actually played this long throughout not drawing any fouls, getting into foul trouble early. So that could honestly could have helped them throughout the season if she would have stayed out.
The big thing also with this is there were no bench points for Northwest. All 72 points were scored from their starters.
That's insane.
It is. They really didn't get any help from the bench, and that's where all those minutes came from. Is you had a set of 5 out on the floor that was working, and if you're a coach, you find a set of 5 that works, stick with that set of 5, and that's another thing, just kind of on the back of your mind throughout this season. There was a lot of subbing going on, and that's because they couldn't find that set of 5 that could continually play well over a long string of time, and this Washburn game. That's why these players were out there for so long, is it was going right and it was going well, and you don't want to break that up by throwing subs out there unless someone absolutely needs one to get a breather.
Well, yeah, and looking at the statistics from bench versus starters, another thing is the bench that came in the only stats collected were 1 assist and 1 turnover. No rebounds, no fouls, no anything. And Northwest ended with 15 total rebounds, whereas Washburn ended with 33. So if you look at just that statistic, you think Washburn would ran away with the game early, and it was all said and done. But it like Jacob was saying, it was back and forth for a while even. And for Northwest, they were out doubled over 20 rebounds, or over like their number double that. It's just phenomenal that they were able to hang on and still beat out this Washburn team.
I'd say what kept them, what won them this game completely is that the Bearcats shot 11 for 25 from 3, whereas the I'm just gonna say Washburn because I apparently can't pronounce their nickname, but Washburn shot
Ikabods.
Yeah, sure. 4 of 17 from beyond the arc. So that difference there is a 7 difference, 21 points right there in the point difference from 3-pointers, because in almost every other facet of the game, Washburn, for the most part, outplayed Northwest. They shot better from the field. They, like you just said, out-rebounded them by twofold. And it's just when you hit threes, it's crazy what happens. I mean, the men's team's been doing it all year, and the women's team kind of went out there to Washburn and did the same thing.
As Northwest women finished on the season 8-20, 4-15 in the MIAA. The women's basketball teams that are going into the MIAA tournament are Fort Hays State, Central Missouri, Emporia State, Pittsburgh State, Lindenwood, Washburn, Central Oklahoma, Nebraska Kearney, and Missouri Western. Moving things over to the men's side, let's start off on Tuesday, where Northwest defeated Missouri Western 70-68. One of the games that Northwest was kind of cold throughout this entire game, and they ended up pulling it out.
Yeah, they just played bad, at least comparatively to them and comparatively to most teams. I think they only shot, somewhere around 40% from the field. They turned the ball over 11 times, which are two things that usually they shoot at least 45-50% from the field. This is what we're used to seeing with them, and they do not turn the ball over that often. And they did both of those things a lot. Defensively, they were okay. They made plays when it mattered, but I mean that was a scare there by Western that almost ruined the perfect season that they ended up getting. So
2 things from this game is, one is Coach McCollum said this, and it's been floating around, but Northwest needed this type of game because you'd be a little bit foolish to think the rest of these, if Northwest is lucky enough, good enough to play 9 more games, they're not gonna. You get into the deep stages of the tournament, you're probably gonna have to play some close games. You're gonna be playing some teams not in the MIAA. There's going to be close games, and Northwest hasn't really played a whole lot of close games. They've played some single-digit games where late in the game they open it up, but this was a game where they had to do the right things at the end of the game and figure out a way to win when they weren't playing well. The second thing from this game is now twice we've seen teams come in with a scheme that speeds up the Bearcats. They throw traps at the young guards. They do some things on defense that speeds up the Bearcats, and 2 times we've seen it work. We saw it work for 35 minutes against Central Missouri the first game before Northwest was able to figure it out. And then Missouri Western, when they got down big, I think it was 16 points at one point, and they got down, they started trapping the Bearcats. Whoever had the ball, they were throwing traps at and double teams, and it sped the Bearcats up. They missed a lot of shots, and if you're a team in the MIAA tournament, the NCAA tournament, you're matched up with the Bearcats, and you go look at film, there is a weakness with this team right now, and it's with the young guards up front when they get sped up by defenses.
Like you mentioned in your first point there that that McCollum was kind of saying, we needed this game, and he did say after that game, hopefully we'll thank Western for this game in a month or so. 2 days later, after the Washburn game, half his players that we talked to thanked Western for that game, because when they came out and they dropped, they got almost a 30-point victory over the second best team in the region in Washburn, and it's because when you play a game like that against Western, when you're in such a big moment, that was probably the biggest crowd I've seen at Bearcat Arena all season, and they didn't get swallowed by the moment. They hit the shots when they absolutely needed to at the end. Ryan Welty had a huge block towards the end of the game, and they did what needed to be done. But yeah, McCollum said after the game against Washburn that game was almost like a loss for them, and they treated it as such, and they adjusted accordingly. And I think that's kind of what that was for them, kind of a sobering moment or a wake-up call. It just got them going even more.
I think another big key out of that, and I was on the call for this game, and Nolan and myself noticed this every single time, it felt like, is the young leadership from Diego Bernard. He ended with a double-double, 18 points, 12 rebounds, the only double-double on the night. But it was when Hudgens or Wittes or even Hawkins went 0 for 5 from 3. Anytime that any of those guys missed, they would keep their head down for like an extra second, maybe longer. And as soon as Bernard saw that, he'd immediately run over, give them a high five, tell them to keep their head up, and just keep shooting. They were getting open shots early in the game, and as long as they kept shooting, their shot was going to eventually come to them. And Bernard, having that kind of young leadership mentality role, he was something that McCollum was able to build on, and everything that he did was kind of put in the spotlight in this game, particularly for me at least. I know Wittes ended with 29 points, but Bernard was able to kind of spark that offensive awakening in the second half of this game.
As Northwest did defeat Missouri Western, but going on to the Washburn game that happened last night, on Thursday, Northwest defeated Washburn 72-49, and like you guys said, they treated that like a loss, and then they came back and this was the Northwest team we usually see, good defense, and the scoring was there.
Yeah, in that first half against Washburn, they really didn't shoot that well. They took a 9-point lead into the break, but they didn't shoot as well as you'd expect from it. I think it was only like 23% from three in the first half, which is not what you want. But they opened that second half on a 24-4 run out of the locker room, and that'll pretty much put away any team if you're going on a 24-4 run directly at a halftime when they're already down 9. So I looked up at the clock at that point, and I looked up and it was like, this doesn't feel like a 30-point game, but they were up by 29 points, and it really didn't feel like it because they weren't hitting as many shots, but they were playing just ridiculous defense, and that's kind of been their saving grace over the last couple of weeks, where they haven't necessarily been as consistent in terms of hitting threes, in terms of hitting shots offensively, but their defense has gone from it was always good, but now it's a step ahead. So if they can play the defense they played over the last few weeks and the offense they were playing a few weeks ago, there isn't a team in the country that can beat these Bearcats.
The key thing to remember with this game is, Andrew, you kind of mentioned this a little bit, but Washburn, number 2 team in the MIAA, number 2 team in the Central Region right now, and that's before the next rankings come out. They're also the first team receiving votes in the national poll, so that means they would be technically ranked 26th in the country, and they got beat by 30. And I know that's not what the score says, but that's the late minutes, late in the game, the reserves come in, but the starters beat this team by 30. If you're the rest of the country, I don't know what you can do with this Northwest team, because they can win in so many different ways. It's tough to beat them. They've now got that game where they didn't play well, and they had to find a way to win a game in a tough situation in that Western game. This is going to be a difficult team to guard. It's a difficult team to play against. But if you're one of those other teams in the Central Region, you've got to find something to be able to compete with this Bearcat team. And I think Western, I already said this, but Western and Central Missouri, they've given somewhat of a blueprint to maybe look at and go after the Bearcat team. And I have the mentality right now, I think if you're a coach and you're going into one of these postseason games against the Bearcats, be willing to lose by 40.
Yeah.
Come in with a scheme that either is going to win you the game or if the Bearcats figure it out, you lose by 40. But you've got to try something different than just sitting in a 2-3 zone like we saw Washburn last night.
I asked Ryan Welty last night after the game. He's the only Bearcat on the team that logged minutes in that 2017 National Championship game. I said, obviously you were on that team, you're on this team. Which one's better? And he was very hesitant to answer at first, and he said, that team played a better post. But, I mean, we shoot the lights out on this team. And so he kind of gave us a nondescript answer. So we asked assistant coach Zach Schneider, who was also on that team. And he said that if those teams play 10 times, that the current Bearcats take 6, the 2017 Bearcat take 4. So, I mean, that's a team that won a national championship and went 35-1. That's pretty impressive.
So next week, the MIAA tournament will start as Northwest will play on Thursday, I believe at noon with the tip-off, and that would be one of the winners from that. So they get their first game bye. So once again, Northwest will take a 19-0 regular season MIAA standings into the game with a 29-0 overall record, which is still the longest active streak in basketball in the nation. But that will be our Northwest segment for today right here on the Weekend Sports Kickoff.